Alright guys, welcome to the Wednesday directions video. Obviously in a new location. I didn't have enough time at work today to actually get this done. So even Mr. Lorden has a little bit of homework tonight. So what we're doing today guys is we're going to start taking our notes on the India. We've kind of been covering the basic stuff. That's still going to be relevant. We're still going to talk about it. But in some aspects we're going to dive in a little bit deeper. And that's going to start with today, focusing on Hinduism. So we have all these different learning targets here today. Today mainly is going to be talking about letter F. We're going to be looking at the core beliefs of Hinduism today, and we're going to keep setting the stage a little bit here. So obviously a bunch of vocab. We've been kind of going through this stuff in our book, covering a lot of this main stuff. But as you can see, a lot of stuff to kind of get through here. And for many of you, this is maybe going to be the first time that someone's, I guess, explained to you the intricacies of Hinduism. It is kind of a complicated religion. It has a lot of moving parts, but we're going to try to simplify it and make sure we can walk away with a lot of the critical content. So we've been talking about India. We know it's the subcontinent, the Indian subcontinent, which is basically the current day countries of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. So that's the area we're looking at, as you guys know. India, from a geographical standpoint, gets really lucky because they have a lot of natural features that are tough to get over. So it's tough for people to really invade them. And if we're playing the connect the dots game, if it's tough for people to invade you, you do not have to put a lot of time and money and resources into your army. Thus, you can shift those funds and that energy into different aspects of your religion. And well, different aspects of your culture. In India, it's definitely going to be religion as one of those. So they have the Himalayan mountains. I'll just kind of bring up this map real quick. We have the Himalayan mountains in the north, which obviously tough to get through. Dang near impossible, largest mountain range, or tallest, right? And then the other thing that we got to talk about is they have a desert also in the north, protecting them from any invasions from the west. And then we have the oceans here, right? The Indian Ocean kind of is another physical barrier keeping people away from the ocean. So, all right, so they're pretty much, they're in a good spot. They're pretty safe. And that's kind of what this whole deal is talking about. Some other interesting pieces about their geography. I'm going to have this be a test question, so let's make sure we jot this part down. Monsoons, the seasonal winds, monsoons that dominate India's climate. So this is the number one factor of their climate is the monsoons. It has the most impact. It affects the most things. And because of that, we're going to know that. One of the biggest geographical challenges and hurdles that they have. So for them, the winter winds are dry. And the summer winds bring rains, can cause flooding, typhoons, all those things can come in. All right, so they basically have kind of like two seasons, a dry season and a wet season. All right. This is just explaining where they come from. They come from like the Russian steppes. The Russian steppes are basically just Asia's version of the Great Plains. That's kind of where they come from. Their language family comes from Sanskrit. We've already talked about that a little bit. Besides just these people coming over from India, we do have the Aryans make another appearance here. And we've talked about them with the Mesopotamia unit. So that's kind of how far back we've gone in time with this India unit. Now, we're going to kind of skip ahead here. The one thing you guys want to know, it's a test question, is these sacred writings called the Vedas. All right? And the Vedas tell us a lot about Aryan culture. Let's dive into Hinduism here a little bit, okay, and India in general. It's called a caste system. Basically, they actually have a system in place where it's like a social structure in order, okay? And you don't like date out of your class. You don't normally associate with people outside of your class. You're kind of stuck in your caste. You're not going to date anyone above or below. You're not really going to hang out with people above or below. And you're born into your caste. So it's not like America when you can like live the American dream and you can start in poverty and you can work your way up and be a multi-millionaire, billionaire if you wanted to. In India, that we're talking about here during this time, you're really stuck in your caste, and normally it's what your parents' caste are. So we want to know on the quiz, you'll have these 5 castes jotted down, and you have to know what each one represents. So on the top of the caste system, we have the Brahmins, and the Brahmins are just the priestly class. Below the Brahmins, we have the Kshatriyas, and the Kshatriyas are just the warriors or the fighters. Below them, we have the Vaishyas, and these are just the peasants or the traders, so kind of like your merchant class, your business people, right? Below them, we have the Shudras, who are the laborers, the kind of the peasant class, or the peasant class is with the traders. Sorry, the laborers. Sorry, they are not peasants. Do not write that down. And then, last but not least, we have kind of this group called the Untouchables, and the Untouchables they're named that for a reason. It's like people from the other caste will literally not touch them. The Untouchables, in like a modern day example of the Untouchables, would be kind of like homeless people. That's what a lot of the Untouchables would be. They'd be homeless, they wouldn't have access to bathing, so they're smelling bad. They don't got health care. So the Untouchables, a good example would be like homeless people today. All right, so those are the castes that you kind of get put in when you're born, and it's kind of whatever your family is. All right, and you're not going to move up and you're not going to move down. All right, and normally the job that you start is the job that you'll have the day you die. You're really stuck in one lane. Okay, there's not a lot of ways to navigate. So Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, the Shudras, and the Untouchables. All right, we're going to skip through that. Now, the sacred writing in Hindu, it's called the Vedas. So you want to write that down. Kind of like the scripture, the holy books. All right, the Vedas, the 4 Vedas. So you want to know that. So let's just make sure we have that down. We want to know the Vedas. We want to know that they're the sacred text of Hindu. And there's 4 of them, but we don't have to know that. We just want to know what the Vedas actually are. And in basic layman's terms, just the holy book of the Hindu religion. It's written in Sanskrit. It's the core beliefs. Inside of it, there's hymns, there's poems that you could sing, religious prayers, magical spells, list of all the gods and goddesses, because Hindu, polytheistic, multiple gods. We're just going to focus on 3, but I just want you guys to know that there are literally hundreds, okay? So, with this Hindu rebirth that comes up, so Hinduism is widespread in India, and no one knows when and where it exactly started. So there is no person who comes up with the religion. It's been lost to time. All right, so here's the 3 gods that we've been looking at, and you want to know what each one is. All right, so although Hinduism is polytheistic, belief in many gods, it moves towards monotheism in a way, God's part of one divine force. So let's just look at the chief gods then, the main ones. We have Brahma, who's the creator of the world. We have Vishnu, who's the preserver of the world. And then we have Shiva, the destroyer of the world. And we talked about them today in class, and they're also in our reading. So if we're seeing them all over the place, we definitely have to know them on our test. Another god that may be considered, but is the mother Ganges. Now, the Ganges River runs through India, and this is and the river has kind of become spiritual to the people of India. For example, it's not uncommon if I was going to go somewhere close to the Ganges River, and let's say I was just a citizen, people in my village would tell me, they'd give me jars. So when I'm going to the Ganges, I would literally scoop up, and my whole village would give me jars to fill up with water so they could have it. And it kind of becomes kind of like this holy water, okay? Where you would, someone who's really sick, people in India during this time would not think like, hey, let's go get some help. It's, hey, let's go send someone to the Ganges River to get this water so we can, sprinkle it on them, we can have them drink it. That's what they really need. Okay, so it's really ingrained in their religion. So you have people, going there praying in front of the Ganges, people who they're bathing in the Ganges, they're going to the bathroom in the Ganges, and because of it's so popular, even nowadays, it is unbelievably polluted, because it's just nasty nowadays, okay? But you just want to know, the Ganges River plays an incredible spiritual role inside Hinduism, okay? Moving on, again, no one founder, okay, because that's going to be a test question. Who founds India? You guys are going to be smart, and you're going to select none of the above, because you're geniuses. Let's kind of keep it on here. I know I'm going fast, so I hope you guys can kind of keep up. So in Hindu, it teaches, I wouldn't say it teaches, I should say. I'm just going to read from the slide here, and I'll kind of give my thoughts. So in Hinduism, each person has an Atman, okay? It's a soul that's united with all others. Okay, so we each have a soul. It's all connected. Now that soul is going to go through a period of reincarnation. So whenever you die, you don't go to heaven or you don't go to hell. You just get reborn again. Okay. Now, when you're reborn, that's the only time that you can move into a new caste. Okay, so to decide that if you're going to move up a caste or move down a caste or stay the same, it depends on your soul's good and bad deeds that you did in your past life. So if you are a really bad person in your past life, when you're reborn, you could get reborn in a different caste, and again, you can also get reborn like different animals too. All right, but we're just going to think about it as, I'm reborn as another person. So a soul's good and bad deeds in Hindu, it's karma. What comes around goes around. So if you're a good person in your past life, you get good karma. When you die, you get reborn as something good. If you have bad karma and you die, you get reborn as something bad. That's about as simple as I can put it. All right, so the idea of reincarnation is really big. Okay, and it plays into the caste system. The Upanishads are kind of just these teachings that are used. So sitting down near, referring to a teacher and student, make sure you're sitting down near. These are just kind of like helpful advice, suggestions to help you. So affirm that true knowledge could not only satisfy the intellect, but also instill virtue. Evil is the fruit of ignorance. The pursuit of wisdom is the pursuit of the highest possible good. To attain it bestows both power and wisdom. So these are just two examples focusing on, for us, I chose these two because we're in school, and these two pertain to education. All right. The smarter you are, the better it is for you, right? To attain it bestows both power and wisdom. All right. And by having that, you're increasing your highest possible good. You're increasing your karma. Here's some other Upanishads that you guys can kind of read through and take a look at. I'm not going to spend too much more time on them because we are hitting our time limit here. And again, Hinduism changes and develops over the last 2,500 years. Different forms of gods grow in importance. Today, Hindus choose their own path to moksha. And moksha is a perfect state of understanding. It is the goal of all people who practice Hinduism. You want to reach moksha, because if you reach moksha, then you get to break away from the caste system. You're done with the caste system. You don't got to worry about it anymore. Okay, so that's why. Because the caste system can be seen very bearing and kind of limiting if you're not in the highest caste. So having this option of breaking free from that is obviously super exciting for them. So we get moksha, the perfect state of understanding. It's like the Buddhism version of nirvana, right? We talked about that. Nirvana is the goal of anybody who practices Buddhism. Moksha is the ultimate goal of anyone practicing Hinduism. All right. We get one interesting group. It's like a sub religion out of Hinduism. It's called Jainism. And Jainism is extremely interesting. Okay, so let me explain it. They will not harm any creature. Okay, ever. And what I mean by that is when they're walking, they'll have a broom and they'll be sweeping just in case they don't step on any bug or anything on the ground, maybe an ant. So they sweep it away. They don't pick fruit from the tree. You have to wait for the fruit to fall off the tree. Okay, you can't harm anything. When it may seem kind of normal now, but before this whole COVID thing, they walk around with masks to make sure they're not, potentially could, suck something in and kill it. That's how hardcore it is. So Jainism, I'll show you guys some videos too tomorrow if you're in class of Jainism too, kind of showcasing it. But it's a really interesting religion where the whole thing is not to harm any creature. And obviously, if you're not harming anybody or harming any creature, that's only going to help your karma. That's only going to help you in your next life. All right, guys, that's all I got for today. Let me know if you have any questions. We'll talk more tomorrow.